I want to talk a little about the relationships that people at IDA have with our neighbors. And that's a complicated question in the sense that, like, you have to go close to a mile usually to find a neighbor. So, first off, we don't have many. We don't have many super close neighbors in a way. We have, and really the closest neighbor is gone most of the time as someone who's a professor in Atlanta and just comes up once a week or once every 2 weeks for a short period of time. And then next, past that, is 2 pieces of land that were bought by a Mennonite family who are very active in church and also have cows, pigs, and other farm animals which people at IDA help to take care of when they're gone. I think some people, such as our Mennonite neighbors, are at first kind of freaked out by the idea of living by a bunch of queers, and then people that are willing to get to know us usually like us because we're generally friendly people. It's like not hard to become friends with us. Then after you go past that first mile, well, let me talk a little about the neighborhood where we live. The neighborhood where Ida lives is in DeKalb County, Tennessee. It's a mostly rural county about 70 miles east of Nashville, Tennessee. And it's a dry county as far as alcohol goes, except for you can buy beer because it's considered a malt beverage. There's very weird laws. The county I live in seems to be run politically mainly by old moneyed families in this area.
Republican?
It's been a Democratic county until very recently.
Well,
and it's pretty much split Democrat-Republican. And there's a lot of influence from the Southern Baptist Church and the affairs of the county, which is part of why it stays a sort of dry county. And this county has one of the highest suicide rates in the country and has, over the last number of years, surveys. There's not like great opportunities for youth to do anything around here, and in fact there seems to be resistance to it. There's something weird going on politically. There's a weird power dynamic where a lot of people aren't very empowered and don't get a lot of information about how to take control of their lives. So our county has the highest teen pregnancy rate in the state of Tennessee. And there's a lot of people that have trouble finding decent paying jobs here. There's a lot of people that there's not very many exciting social outlets publicly. And we live in a county that, like much of the rural South, had a lot of slaves and then chased away black people after slavery was abolished. And some of that was done through intimidation, and some of that was done through just like discrimination as far as transportation goes or employment. This area has been like, one thing that's been changing a lot about the area we're in is that over the last 10 or 20 years there's been a lot of immigrants arriving from Mexico and Central America, and it's not always a cozy situation with a lot of the white folks in this area, and there's been some violence against people from Latin America, and there's also been some small amount of organizing going on in rural Tennessee to support people to be able to live here without fear. I guess all of the history to me is really important to addressing the question of what our relationships are like with our neighbors, because most people that spend a lot of time at IDA are considered outsiders in an area that has very specific political and historical traditions, and I think it's good for us to be like active in small ways in the community and agents of change, and yet it's also kind of a scary thing because many of us who are viewed as outsiders by the old order, good old boy network, are vulnerable here, and therefore we have to be careful how we think about challenging things. And a lot of times people move here who have been very politically active in their communities before, but then feel more isolated out here. One of the ways that I've gotten involved just a little bit is by performing at, there's a youth services fair held annually, and they call upon us to come and still walk and juggle and things like that to entertain. When I first moved to IDA 15 years ago, it seemed like a lot of people in town, a number of businesses weren't so friendly to us. Like people looked at us like we were utter freaks, and maybe we were utter freaks, and maybe that's why they did it. But it was weird to go in a supermarket and buy something and have a cashier just be cold to you and not look at you, and stuff like that. And that's changed so much. It's amazing how many places in town seem happy to see us and are respectful and nice. And I remember when I used to kind of mentally count in my head how few places there were that would be nice, but a lot of people have gotten used to us and become friends with us, and I'm really excited about that. Okay. IDA is sometimes called Hippie Hollow by folks who live in this area that aren't very familiar with us, and IDA is called Hippie Hollow because the people that we bought this land from were hippies. They told me that when they first bought this land around 1970, that there were two men who were part of starting this place. It wasn't called IDA, they called it Whippoorwill Hollow, named after the bird. And they told me that when they first walked in town, two white men with long hair in around 1970, that everyone's jaws just dropped, like the world came to an end because there were men with long hair. It was just not heard of from here. And then they said the following weekend, back then it was typical for people to like go driving in the country and look at things on the weekend as a pastime. They said the following weekend there were tons of cars that came to gawk at the hippies. And there was a really tentative existence between the hippies at what was called Hippie Hollow and a lot of folks in town. And but I think one of the things that happened was they lived here long enough that, people started to relate better, and social barriers got broken down. And I actually believe that folks like the hippies that lived here before IDA existed really paved the way for it to be possible for queers to be here. Like I give them serious credit for helping to make some inroads here that it might not have been so possible for us to coexist as peaceful as we do. And maybe it's because like a lot of people in town start to see freaky people, but see how that's beautiful, and they see like all the freaky people make the beauty of the world. I got it wrong, to paraphrase Michael Franti. Okay. I work at a greenhouse for Spring Rush, and a lot of the people we work with, we talk about plants, because that's what you do when you're a dorky plant and flower lover. So except you don't talk about plants with the people that really don't care about plants, which you'll find in a greenhouse too. They just care about getting their paycheck mainly. But anyway, I work in a place that I really love, and a lot of people kept expressing interest when a couple of us, Anais and I, both worked at this greenhouse a few years ago, and they really wanted to see our flower gardens, they said, because we're always talking plants, and they're like, oh, we got to see your flower gardens. So we had them out for lunch and to see the gardens, but I think they were actually way more interested in just seeing how do the freaky queers live, because we were such an anomaly to them. They just didn't know what to think or make of us, and so that sometimes happens where people are just, I think there's a lot of people that are kind of mainstream defined, look mainstream, and they're craving some connection with something different. They just don't have the vocabulary or the connection or something to make it happen. I think a lot of people that are basically seem really conservative are actually really open-minded when they come in contact with something.